This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So I believe one of the most popular features throughout DJI's entire drone lineup is Active Track. There's something that people love about the drone doing all the work for them and following them autonomously while they're doing some sort of physical activity. Whether it's running, biking, skiing, snowmobiling, it doesn't matter. If it's cool and fast-paced, likely they want a drone following them to capture what they're doing, and what better than an autonomous drone to do all the work for them. With that said, it's kind of a no-brainer that DJI made a drone that is completely revolved around autonomous flight modes. That drone is, of course, the NEO. This is the smallest and least expensive drone that DJI has made, and it is a drone that was built with automated flight modes as its main method of control. This is evident as they sell a version of the NEO that is literally just the drone. So it connects to your phone, giving you control of the tracking features, and you can even bring up a set of virtual sticks to move it around with just the touchscreen. There's also a button on the front of the drone that lets you select a flight mode, long press to engage that mode, and then the drone will fly up and out of your hand to begin its automated maneuver. Now, without a doubt, one of the most frequently asked questions I've received over the past couple of weeks on my NEO videos is what can this drone track and keep up with, which is a valid question. It's a fairly small drone, which means there are some limitations. So people want to know if they're running, if they're on their bike, or maybe if they're on a faster electric rideable, what can this drone keep up with? So in this video, I want to go over a full tutorial of how to use the tracking features with NEO, and then I'm going to go over some different tests to show you exactly what this drone is able to keep up with in terms of speed and pacing. Okay, so there are two types of tracking modes that the NEO has built in. There's follow, which will always stay behind the subject, so as you turn, the drone will follow your moves and try to take the same path as the subject. This is really good for the drone to avoid obstacles without having any obstacle avoidance sensors to detect objects in its path. It assumes that if the path was clear for you, it'll be clear to fly through. The other tracking mode is direction track, which can be a little more risky as the drone will follow you from whatever direction you started from. It'll follow you from the front, from the side, from the back. It basically removes the limit of only flying from behind the subject, but just know that if you start to move a little too fast or make sharp turns, the drone will lag along and default to following you from behind. I have to stress that if you're flying with direction track, you are very likely to crash the drone if you aren't careful. Remember, this drone can follow you in any direction, so if it's flying from the side or backwards, it's not going to know if there's any obstacles in the way, and if there's a tree or a pole there, it's just going to run right into it. Again, if you're using the follow mode, it's got a much better chance of moving around those obstacles, but there's no active avoidance sensors on this drone to tell what's around it and make decisions based on what it sees. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Like where I was with all of the trees around me, it definitely wasn't the best place to fly the drone, but I'd recommend if you're in a tight area like that, keep the drone closer and move at slower speeds so that you can make sure it's not going to run into anything. But the best case scenario when using direction track is if you're out in the open and you can get the drone further away from you and not worry about it crashing. I do have to say that if you're moving at just a walking pace, the drone does a really good job at staying on the side the drone began tracking you from. Like in this example where I have the drone following me from the left side, when I start to move to the right, it picks up the speed and stays to my left so that it stays on the same side that I want it. The tracking software overall does a really good job at understanding which direction the subject is moving so that it can stay on the same side no matter which way you move. For further customization, you can change the height and the follow distance of the drone for each of these flight modes. These range from low, flat, and high for the drone's height, and close, medium, and far for the drone's distance to the subject. Depending on what you're following with the drone, you can change these parameters to meet your needs right within the Fly app without being connected to a remote. Using the DJI Fly app's voice control, you can maneuver the drone with just your voice by saying something like closer, further, higher, or lower. This is great for hands-free control if you're too busy with your hands on, say, a bike, but you have your phone mounted on your handlebars for easy access. You can also use the virtual joystick to position the drone where you want it, so I can move the drone further and higher back if need be. If you're on the regular remote, you can move the sticks on there as well to get the drone in a better position for what you're following. There is one big benefit to using the remote controller though, and that's the fact that you can maneuver the gimbal up and down to better frame your subject using the gimbal wheel on the back of the remote controller. Instead, with the Fly app directly connected to the drone, the arrows on the right side of the screen don't allow for the gimbal to be pitched up or down, so what you have is what you get in terms of your framing. Okay, so there's a lot to remember when it comes to how to use the different tracking modes with this drone, but hopefully that quick crash course allowed you to understand what NEO is capable of. Here's a quick breakdown of everything this drone can do. If you want, you can take a screenshot of this recap and keep it with you when you're getting familiar with your drone. The more you use it, the more you'll get comfortable with all the ways that this drone can track a subject. There are so many ways to use it, from no controller to using your phone to using an actual remote. It almost becomes confusing, but the reality is that this drone is very versatile and can be used no matter what what your needs or skill level is. Now, before we do some testing to see what the Neo can track, here's a quick word from this video sponsor, Squarespace. Just recently, I completely overhauled my Squarespace site with a brand new template to give it a clean feel. It was difficult to find a template because of all the great options that Squarespace offers, but I eventually found one that allowed me to share my images and information the way that I wanted. Redoing my website was seamless as the new Fluid engine made it easy to fully customize every aspect to my liking. I've been looking for the best place to share my content online, and doing it on my own terms with Squarespace allows me to completely customize the experience. My website is like a central hub for all of my photos and videos, and I'm the one that gets to control how it looks and functions. Squarespace has become a great tool to help run my business from top to bottom, from opening a store to sell prints and presets, to offering courses for my clients, and to invoice them all through one service make for a seamless workflow. So a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video and helping me display my work online for over half a decade. Okay, now it's time to get into some testing to understand how this drone performs and what you can expect when it comes to different tracking scenarios. To start, let's try a few different speeds to find the limit of what this drone is able to handle. I want to try having the Neo follow me while I'm walking, then we're going to go a bit faster on my one wheel, and then we'll turn the speed all the way up on my boosted board. Before that though, for those wondering, no, the Neo will not track a car, and it's not because the car is too fast and just leaves it in the dust. That really is the case for most drones out there, unless you're Red Bull making that super fast drone tracking an F1 car. But regardless, it doesn't track a car, and it's because of the software limitations built into the Neo. Over the years, DJI software has gotten really good at understanding what it's following, so the active track software can actually identify the subject that it's tracking. For example, when you select a subject, it'll show an icon based on what it thinks it's following: a person, a boat, or a car, and it's accurate pretty much 99% of the time. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it get it wrong. Knowing this information allows the drone to change its flight parameters based on the subject for the best possible experience. It might fly closer to a person on a bike, but instead will keep a further following distance from a car as it'll be moving faster and it's ultimately a bigger object. So yeah, I've tried tracking a car with the Neo and it just straight up won't let you, which I think is for the best considering this drone is small and isn't the most powerful. Even if you just want to drive slow and have the drone keep up with you, you can't. The software won't let you. Instead, you're gonna have to find a friend to fly the drone manually and chase after the car. With that said, remember the tagline of this drone. DJI is marketing the Neo as a vlog drone, which I think is an insanely outdated term, but they did not build this for high action sports. They didn't build this to follow a race car, to follow a person on a dirt bike, to follow somebody moving really fast. Instead, it's made to put the drone out in front of a group of friends and take photos of yourself or take photos of a group of people. Or if you're, say, trying to take photos of a landscape on a hike, you just pop the drone up with your phone and snap a couple of photos. You know, the more I think about it, the more I actually see this drone being pretty good for that, quote unquote, vlogging. You can just let the drone hover out in front of you and use it as a portable camera on a tripod. Your phone can act as a microphone and sync the audio to your video right on the Neo's internal storage. But I found that just trying to sync the video up from the drone with the audio from my DJI Mic 2 on my body gives me much better results. With that said, as a quote unquote vlog drone, it does a really good job at tracking you when you're just on your feet, walking, or at a faster running pace. The follow mode keeps the drone right behind you, and like I mentioned, you can change the distance and height of the drone right off the bat in the settings or while you're flying by using voice control or the manual controls. Even with direction track, you can have the drone in front of you and you can maybe film a walking and talking video, so this drone is like your personal cameraman moving in front of you. Picking up the speed, the Neo does a great job of keeping up with me on my one wheel. I'm riding the original Pint here with a maximum speed of about 13 miles an hour, but in this video, I'm probably keeping the board around 10 miles an hour. There's a good amount of separation here, but you can tell that the drone is easily keeping up with me at my speed. It doesn't seem like I'm gaining distance from the drone to the point where I'd eventually lose it. While on my one wheel, I figured I'd try direction track to have the drone follow me from the front at this faster speed, but almost immediately, the drone decided that I was moving too quickly and kind of moved to the side so that I could pass it, and it would assume a position behind me and then just keep up as if I was using the regular follow mode. I would say that direction track is probably best used for a slower pace like a walk or a run, and not for a faster pace like on a bike or one of these faster electric rideables. Now finally, for my boosted board, I tried slowly ramping up the speed with the throttle pinned at about half speed, and you can see that the drone starts to drop back with more and more separation being created between the drone and I. I don't have an official speed reading here, but I can say that I was going at about 15 miles per hour and the drone just didn't want to keep up. Also, I have to point out the horizontal speed in the bottom left corner, which is just flat out wrong. This is a glitch that definitely needs to be fixed, but I found that in most flights, it totally displays my speed wrong. Also, for those looking at my flight mode in the top left corner and saying that I should have been in sport mode instead of normal mode, just know that this has absolutely no no effect on how fast the drone flies when tracking a subject. Even when I have the drone in sport mode and then zip off on my boosted board with the throttle fully pinned, the Neo is left in the dust and I'm left having to fly the drone back to me. This is actually a really good example to share and brings up a point that I have mentioned in previous videos. If you want to fly the Neo with no remote, you need to make sure that you keep an eye on it, because if it stops following you, it might just land in the middle of nowhere or stay at a hover. This is why I always recommend having a remote, or at the very least, your phone connected to the drone so that you can understand what's going on and not just having it fly out there blindly. So the final verdict is that this drone is pretty good at tracking for its size and price. The tracking software is top-notch from DJI throughout their entire lineup of drones, but the one thing I think holding this drone back is its size and performance. Just look at DJI's higher-end drones that are faster, have a longer flight time, and have omnidirectional obstacle avoidance, meaning that it can see what's around it and change its flight path to avoid obstacles while keeping pace with what it's tracking. You can also tell the drone where to follow you on the fly, making for a really advanced tracking experience and overall a better experience than what you get with Neo. A little drone for only $199 can only do so much, and I think that for its price, for its size, and for its performance, it offers a great tracking experience for what it is. Now, I've got these other drones on the table because, as I've mentioned in the past, imagine the Neo tracking experience in a drone like the Avata 2. It's much bigger and more powerful and could definitely keep up with a faster moving subject, and really, they could just implement that in a firmware update, except for the whole button thing. You don't have an actual button on here to where you could do the automated flight modes without a phone or without your, say, remote controller, but they could implement the same tracking experience with the Avata 2, and that would be great for keeping up with faster moving subjects. I also think that the tracking experience with active track on drones like the Air 3 is much better because it has the sensors around the drone to move around objects and keep up with the subject, and it also has the 3-axis mechanical gimbal to give you perfectly stable video. So I think that we've got a great lineup here of different tracking experiences. Like, the Neo is great because I don't need a remote controller. I can use the button or my phone and I'm set to go. But instead with the Air 3, I need a controller to use active track. It can be a little bit clunky. So I think that if we could kind of combine this entire lineup into one single drone that's fast, can be flown with no controller, and has obstacle avoidance and a stabilized camera, could be a real winner for active track as a whole. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you've got any questions on tracking with the Neo, feel free to leave them down below. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.